doing something a little bit different, a little bit of a follow-up here of some DC news. DC news. Figured we'd talk about what's going on in a lot of DC stuff going on right now. My name is Akasan.
DC San, hey super crew.
And he's like super depressed.
Dude, I've been in the studio filming dramas and commercials and a few other projects the past, like, inside of what, a week and a half?
Right.
So I haven't seen a lot of news online, partially because also trying to stay away from too many spoilers, but for the most part, I've just been bogged down.
Well, let's get into the smaller news. Green Lantern Corp casting.
Yes. So there's been news that there may be casting calls for it coming up soon. I'm going to double check that to make sure that it's confirmed, because I too will be putting my name in that hat, because I would love to play a Green Lantern, specifically John Stewart, but just saying. And if they were like, oh well, this time we need you to play a Red Lantern, that is okay.
Okay, so the latest director of The Flash has quit. I'll read something to you guys directly, exactly coming from The Hollywood Reporter, reported the other day that this movie that was supposed to come out March 2017.
Right?
Yes, or at least in pre-production, and release date in March 16th, 2018. Counting their chickens a little bit before they're hatched here. They lost their director again, and in all likelihood that means that the movie will be delayed. The reasons for that, as quoted, when I was approached by Warner Brothers in DC about the possibility of directing The Flash, I was excited about the opportunity to enter this amazing world of characters that I loved growing up and still do to this day. I was also excited to work with, how do you say his name? Ezra Miller, right? Ezra Miller, right. Which is a phenomenal young actor. And I pitched a version of this film in line with my voice, humor, and heart. While it's disappointing that we couldn't come together with creatively on the project, I remain grateful for the opportunity. He wishes them the best as they journey into the Speed Force. However, which is very interesting, because this is painting a conflicting picture at this point. That sources say that the Dope Helmer's vision of making a movie with more edge clashed with the studio's take, and that is actually quite interesting, because it leads a few questions in my mind. I'm not so concerned about the studio being involved, but I'm more concerned about the idea of, and again, this is just coming from sources, that it appears that he wanted to make the movie edgy. And for me, if there's one DC character that shouldn't sort of have edge is subjective, but if there's one DC character that shouldn't have edge and should be a little more lighthearted, it would be the Flash. So I'm kind of worried as to, we've already seen what the fallout of BvS has done for the rest of the DCEU, what it did to Suicide Squad.
I think it's one of those where if he were going in the direction of trying to make it edgy, then having a character like Wally West there, along with Barry Allen, would give it the lightheartedness that it needs, because Wally West is known for being a wisecracker, fun-loving, and just he's that lighthearted character that you would need for balance.
But you're
if they don't want to do, if the studio is like, hey, look, we suffered too much from the past too, let's do something completely different. Not that it's a bad idea, but I think that's something that may be needed right now, and Barry Allen, his character going that direction kind of fits the trailer for Justice League. So doing something different, they could feel like a conflict.
I guess we really won't know until either more information comes out or we see the final product and what the movie is going. Because we have what's his name, Josh Tank, I believe, who he's an interesting guy, because he left. He was actually contracted to work on the Fantastic Four movie, and then he bounced, I believe, halfway through or something like that. It was a very similar situation, and you could totally see what happened, where the movie just kind of dropped and completely changed. Same with X3 when Bryan Singer left X-Men. What the hell was that movie called? Something X.
The Last Stand.
The Last Stand. There you go. Where the movie had its Singer moment, and then you could totally see where the Rush Hour guy kind of came in and it fucked everything up.
But it is kind of hard to compare the Flash to the Fantastic Four. Given the Fantastic Four was one of Marvel's first teams, really, Flash, so much cooler. Sorry, and I'm sounding somewhat biased only because the stories for me were more compelling in the Flash comic books than they were in the Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four team-ups with other characters were more interesting to me than their standalone books, but that's me. For me, the reason I feel somewhat heartbroken about a director stepping down from the Flash is because I'm one of those people that wants to see some of the other characters in the DC universe get some light shined on them. I'm a huge fan of Batman and Superman, don't get me wrong, but having the Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman, given those movies are coming out, Flash is one of those, like, it's a long time coming.
But didn't Wonder Woman also lose a director early on too?
Which actually could have been a good thing, looking at the previous trailer.
Right, they lost the director, but didn't Aquaman also? Holy shit! Like
I'm not sure if Aquaman lost one, but I know Wonder Woman did in at one point.
I remember. No, you know what? I take that back. There were at one point when things were looking really bad for the DCEU. People were thinking that they were going to bounce. Like the director was going to leave,
but
didn't. Like he took a whole photo of him standing behind.
Yeah, which is cool because you have directors say, "Hey, look, the DCEU is catching flack because of many different things from many different angles. Let's see what we can do to change, popular opinion." And I like that because one, it's a creative challenge in general. Taking on a huge project, it is, but also taking on the challenge of trying to impress fans from before and new fans is really difficult.
I think in the other issue, I think the biggest problem that DC is having right now, or DCEU and Warner Brothers is having, is that they were trying to fill the blank left by the Nolan work, which was a respected brand that people were like, oh, Christopher Nolan has another movie, or he's doing another. I'm gonna go check that. Nolan, whatever Nolan's doing, I'm doing. Even the World War II movie, nobody really even knows what it's about, but we're ready to go see it. Interstellar, same deal. And so when Sync Copy and they had the whole fallout and everybody just basically left when what happened was Warner Brothers completely got restructured, and then Kevin Sugihara actually became in control, and you could just see all the new faces who were coming in. It's kind of interesting to me because I feel I kind of put this new team of Warner Brothers in that same zone as the Miami Heat when the Heatles were announced.
Okay.
Wade, LeBron, and Bosch. And they came out, they had the big celebration, and it was like, not one, not two, not three, 4, 5. And they started counting their chickens before they were hatched. That's the way I sort of saw this WB DCEU announcement at Comic-Con, where everybody's like, it's all going to start with Batman v Superman, like that. We have a whole slate of movies that we're announcing, and it's going to be amazing like that. And they had this hype building, but you can't build a showy face like that and not have a solid foundation. I think this is where a lot of the cracks are starting to show now, where, unlike the other side of the road on Broadway here with Marvel, they've had many years to build up this sort of reputation where they, even though don't get me wrong, I hate the fact that they announced all their movies the same way up until 2020, all the future Marvel movies. I really did not like that either, mainly because I watched Doctor Strange getting ready to expect a hint for the next movie, getting ready to expect a hint for the next movie, Avengers, so on and so forth. But at least Marvel had the credibility and already has the structure where it's really hard for them to basically fail at a movie. But getting back to this whole announcement situation, one of their biggest things Kevin was trying to promote was the fact that he was giving directors more free range, and that was kind of a slight jab at Marvel in itself, considering what happened with Ant-Man and all the other studio situations. But it seems that we're having exactly the same problems here now, going forward.
It basically boils down to production is never easy because you are dealing with creative entities and creative views from many different directions and people. So between the studio, the producers, the director, everybody has their take on the same character or characters, and you have to find a way to make it work. Sometimes it works really well immediately, and sometimes it doesn't. It takes time or trial and error. It's frustrating because no one person is correct, but no one person is completely wrong.
Absolutely.
And that's what takes movies more time to get done. That's why directors drop out and come in, because you'll have a great director, great cast and everything, then the script's not good. Or the script's fantastic, but the director doesn't fit.
Correct.
So I'm not, it's not that I'm worried, I just wish things would settle down so they could just get out a good movie, good merchandising and things for us to enjoy.
Well, and I think that's
the
biggest problem is this, again, when you announce, like Sony announced, as the Joker would say, they had plans. But Sony announced the whole Spider-Verse type of thing too. So I think everybody's trying to do what Marvel did, but it doesn't work that way unless you spent. How long was it? It was like 8 years, I think.
Even Marvel has occasionally gone back and had to backtrack or restructure their movie releasing and stuff like that. It happens. It's part of business. It's one thing that as fans we forget. Yeah. It's a business. Yeah. Now, one thing that Warner and DC could do is have some directors that have been doing some of these projects and things to be there as advisors. Hey, how can I help you? Because we've had the success doing this. Not that they don't have it, but if they don't, doing something like that, because it may actually help some of the directors that are coming in. It's like Kevin Smith.
I get it. Well,
No. The reason I say like Kevin Smith, because he has directed several different episodes of Flash and a few other things. I don't mean movies. I'm talking about the TV shows, and has great success with them. And people actually like those episodes because they talk about it. Because when you go back, it's like, wow, that was a really good episode. And you find out who directed it, it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And not knowing, but enjoying it is awesome. So, advice like that, hey, what worked for you when you did this? How can I apply that to
Well, it's funny. Doing? It's very funny you mentioned that, because let's talk about Frank Miller really quick. So, Frank Miller was recently interviewed by Variety magazine. Just general Batman stuff, because of course, obviously, beyond a shadow of a doubt, a lot of his work 30 years ago, I remind people, 30 years ago, was highly influential. The Dark Knight Returns. It brought back the grittiness of Batman, what people really remember. And so they were wondering what he thought about all things Batman, because every Batman movie has in some way been influenced by his work, right? And if he were, he got worried. If he were to direct a Batman movie, what would he do? So, and I quote, "My dream would be to make it much smaller, to lose the toys and to focus more on the mission, and to use the city a great deal more, because he's got a loving relationship with the city he's protecting. And unlike Superman, his connection to crime is intimate. It has been ever since his parents were murdered. And he defeats criminals with his hands. So it would be a different take. But it would never be in my hands, because it would not be a good place to make toys from. There wouldn't be a line of toys." So I'm reading this, and in some points, I understand what he's saying as a creator, and his very, very particular take on Batman. Yeah. And I get where he's coming from, but at the same time, I thought that line about him using the city to his advantage, I was like, what was Batman Begins then? That was my opinion on that. I thought Nolan at least if not in The Dark Knight, at least in Batman Begins,
Does
really
just
showed Gotham as an entity of you know?
even before and after, like when Bruce Wayne was a young boy, how the train system was set up, purifying system, all that kind of stuff, whether it was tied directly to his family or indirectly, but how the city was working and how they were trying to build it to make it better for everybody.
Right.
And that was one of the things I did like about the first Batman Begins, because they were actually taking things and making it more relatable.
Right, and I thought that's the Nolan trilogy really helped branch out. It made you care about the GCPD. It made you care about Commissioner Gordon. He wasn't just a dude that was in the back. Like, Gordon was so, I don't want to say underused, but he just wasn't really a person. Like, he wasn't really a character in any of the other Batman movies until they made it very apparent. And I thought that was kind of odd. I was like, has Frank Miller not seen the Dark Knight trilogy at all? Like,
that, or did he not like it? That's possible.
Speaking of which, so in my opinion is also, I feel like this idea of like this grittiness, using his hands and all that, the toy thing. See, the toy thing, I don't get. Like, I get where he's coming from as a creative person, and probably what he's had to deal with, or he's heard directors deal with. That was a big problem with Schumacher for Batman and Robin, the whole thing about producing toy lines.
And Batboy.
But if it doesn't make money, you know, you can't, like, Young Justice was actually one of the victims of that similar situation. Young Justice, as far as I remember, was doing very well with ratings when it was actually on a constant schedule, but it wasn't selling enough toys. But like, for me,
there weren't enough being produced.
But here's my deal was like for me, isn't it enough for just ad rates on TV to satisfy things? Because I'm never gonna buy a fucking toy. Like, I'll have some every once in a while. I'll have something, but you know, I'm not the kind of guy, you know, in my this late in my age that I'm gonna go run to Toys R Us to buy toys. I don't think that should equal showing a good story on TV. Like,
no,
that.
It shouldn't. But realistically, when it comes to big budget films and things like that, the marketing does spend down to families, because you have to look at demographics. If you have more than 2 people in the household, other than the mom and the dad, you're dealing with the kids and the kids' friends and so on and so forth. That's money. So they're looking at that, and most mothers buy toys and things for their children because they want them to be happy. Sure. Not saying that fathers don't, but realistically they look at it as like, okay, well, the mother is around the kids a little more often, or is a little more sensitive to making them happy, so they're easier to be like, okay, well, if you do good in school, then we'll work something out.
Well, but I suppose, though, that's the big conflict with making these movies, and that even goes back into the Flash situation. Is like, who is this movie for? Because you can't necessarily have a movie like everybody tries to do the Disney effect, where an animated Disney movie, you can watch. As an adult, you can watch the Disney movie and get some of the jokes that they're referencing. But as a kid, it'll totally go over your head, but you'll just like what the flashy part. I think with these CMBs and such, or CBMs, it's really hard to find that fine line unless you're Marvel. Like, you're making something for adults, but it needs to also be able to be attractive enough for kids.
Right.
So,
but even then, it's like, if you have a story that's dealing with a lot of political issues, a lot of violence, loss of life, stuff like that, that's very dark, and it's away from what most kids should be exposed to up to a certain age. So then it's like, where do you draw the line? So where Marvel has done well at mixing things, as far as saying, okay, well, all of these properties are for everybody, so they make the ratings a little bit lower. Or they have a movie that's geared towards adults, but then they have like 2, 3, 4 different cartoons with those same type of characters, and those go out for the kids. DC does the same thing, but the movies do tend to be geared more towards young adults.
Right.
And It's not a bad thing, but that's the marketing difference.
Right. Well, would you say for the movies or just the entire product line?
I would say most times the movies, because they do have a lot of cartoons and things that are geared towards younger children and toys and things of that nature. At least they'll have, like, say, a New 52 version of Batman, and then they'll have 6 other versions for 6 other age groups that go down, and that way I think they do a really good job.
Speaking of something that was produced mainly for angsty teenagers, I'm just taking that quote from Screen Junkies about Zack Snyder's work. Okay. Frank Miller was asked about Batman v Superman, because this one I find very interesting, because I, of all people, thought that
it was a fantastic movie.
We're talking about Civil War. I, of all people, thought that Frank Miller would be like this was Frank Miller's work, straight from the comics, as people were saying, because when Snyder was actually approached to start doing it, and he was basing everything off of the Dark Knight Returns, he went and he met with Miller and all this.
I could see Miller not liking that, because I could see Miller being one of those who's like, okay, I had this book, it was popular, people enjoyed it, why not do something different as an artist?
So here's what he said: have you seen Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice? Yes. And what did you think? I'll just say thanks. What can I say? No, actually, I'll withdraw that and I'll say you're welcome.
Wow. Okay.
So this is... I'm a little confused with this one, because I thought of all people Frank Miller would love. Now, but before you get there, wait. Do you remember the Legends of the Dark Knight? I got the Michael Jackson reference. Oh, okay. Do you remember when the Legends of Legends of the Dark Knight, I believe, the animated story in the Batman animated, where 3 kids were walking through and they saw that they had their 3 different interpretations of what they thought the Batman was. So they did an Adam West type one. They did I don't remember what the other one was.
Basically did 3 different styles.
Right, and one of them was The Dark Knight Returns, straight Miller and all that.
Spill it, chicken legs. Where's the bat?
Back off, man, I'll waste it. Believe me, I'll do it.
I believe you. You don't get it, son. This isn't a trash heap. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon.
Gotta love him.
Frank Miller loved the shit out of that. Like, he loved it so much. He actually got to see the draft of it first, and he called up Bruce Timm. He's like, "Oh my god, fucking loves this!" Like, he loved it so much. So I always thought that when Frank Miller finally sees Batman v Superman, that he would fucking love it, because it was exactly, at least to me, I was like, this is exactly what, if Frank Miller did The Dark Knight Returns, overall, this is exactly what this movie would have been.
But I can see him having conflicts with the extra things that were put in there.
The killing. To me, that's the main thing with...
I wouldn't say the killing, because I could see him being like, okay, it's a new day and age where it's 30 years after he wrote the story, people have changed. I could see him being like, I may not like it, but I understand the killing part. And kind of like, okay, whatever. For him, I think I would look at him having an issue with the overall story, and or having Doomsday and Wonder Woman added into it the way that they were. I could see his issues being with that section of the movie, as opposed to, wow, this is a great film. I could see him having issues with it, because an artist would love to have their work appreciated, but that doesn't mean they necessarily want to have it copy and pasted on screen. doing things like Christopher Nolan did, where
Okay,
taking
well,
parts of it
wait,
and making
yeah,
what
okay,
he did,
but
he didn't take everything from the book and then just.
But I'll have to stop you on that one only because of specifically the relationship that Miller and Snyder have had ever since 300, Sin City, all just that literally. All Snyder has ever done in his most popular works have taken something from Frank Miller and put it on screen.
It doesn't mean that he was wrong. I'm just saying I could see if Miller wasn't super enthused with this version. What reasons I'm not sure.
Right.
But, if I'm looking at it from an artist's point of view, I could see, okay, well, maybe because there were these things were added, they weren't really needed.
I would just really love for him to go that. It's kind of funny that I can kind of tell that, he is, not necessarily because he's on DC's payroll, but he does get invited to these events. And they give a lot of respect to him, and they're kind of sort of trying to Stan Lee him up a little bit and having him appear. That I guess there's some things that he really wants to say,
but can't, maybe.
But can't, basically. And I am very curious about his position on the Batman killing situation, because the only reason, and I'm trying not to make a big deal out of this, but if you actually read The Dark Knight Returns, the whole killing situation is addressed, but it's done in a way that it's a fake out. He never kills, regardless of what anybody says. He never kills in that goddamn graphic novel. Let me repeat that. He never kills in that graphic novel. Everything that was in there was done as a fake out from kind
of like Superman versus the Elite. He didn't really kill the members of the Elite. It just made it look like that,
right?
So he could get the point across. It's not the right thing to do.
I kind of remember that. I guess so. In some sense, I mean, it's just with Frank Miller's writing, actually, in The Dark Knight Returns, is done so well in the sense where it shows him holding up a gun, and he's like, it's a fake out. It's just a grappling type of hook. It's a long range grappling hook, or let's not forget the entire scene that people for some reason have a very absent selective memory. Batman grabbing the gun, and he's like, "These are this is the weapon of the enemy. This is for the weapon of the weak. Guns are for the weak," and he breaks it with his own hand. I'm like, somewhere around there.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was great.
For me, just hearing you talk about that, and I have read it and I've seen the animated version and things, but hearing you talk about it like that, if that was in the movie, that would have been so awesome and very iconic. That would make an awesome poster. And then having that written down at the bottom.
If only.
If only one of Akasan's fans could do a poster like that, I would love to see, because that sounds impactful.
If only. If only in some other world, if Barry Allen ran through the timelines and fixed a lot of them, and we had the Batman v Superman with the non-killing Batman.
It'd be.
I would have received that movie a lot more.
I will say, from what you read from Frank Miller, the thing that he was talking about dealing with toys, I understand him not wanting to focus on toys for marketing. But when he mentioned it before that in the article, it sounded like he was also talking about not focusing on Batman having so many gadgets, using the word toys. But I can understand that, because he wants to have the character be more focused on, person-to-person interactions and with the city and stuff like that. He may not need a bunch of toys if the story's written well.
But with all due respect, that is his particular Batman.
Yes.
That's his vision of Batman, but that's not necessarily the definitive Batman. Where Batman has kind of been, a lot of people have got it on Frank Miller. His work has begin and end with the word whore. So it's kind of there's a big similarity between his Batman, his Punisher, his Daredevil. There's a lot of this kind of grittiness that never really goes away, and it's very hands-on manhandling type of work. And it worked 30 years ago, but I do feel like at this point Batman has gotten to
always work.
Right. Well, Batman has always come to this point where he's a mix of everything.
Yeah.
He's a superior fighter, a master of many fighting skills, gadgetry. He's a scientist. He's a chemist. He's a detective.
He's intelligent.
He's
He doesn't always
he's a
use his fists for
strategist.
stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Since you mentioned this, here's a question for you because I know you're a big Batman fan. Whose version is the definitive Batman for you?
For me, it's somewhere in between what Bruce Timm and Kevin Conroy have kind of put together, because they've taken all the elements and sort of put together something really there, and sort of where Scott Snyder has been going with his writing, because he's been able to use
Some really good stories.
he's been able to use certain things, and then people don't really acknowledge him too much, but Jeff Loeb does if anything, I think my definitive Batman has been a mix of all of them. It's Kevin Conroy's voice, a lot of Bruce Timm's writing, but it's Jeff Loeb's inner monologue of Batman's thought process that I've fell in love with. If you guys haven't read it, please read Hush. Hush is a really well done.
So you like the art style also?
Well, Jim Lee, of course, but what I'm just saying is that the combination of Jim Lee and, for example,
in the writing.
For example, there's one scene where he's doing the bat thing. He's swinging. His rope gets cut. He's grabbing onto a gargoyle. The gargoyle snaps, and then he cracks his head in a bunch of fucking trash in the homeless area. But one of the panels was like he's saying, first my body fails me, and now my city. Gotham, we are both growing old together. And I thought that was one of the best lines that was ever written. There's some sort of nice romance that Loeb and Lee are able to push out, and he's also done it in other ones. That's Scott Snyder, but
good stories.
Very good stuff. And so Scott Snyder has been able to. I really need to clarify that.
I knew he was going to say that.
Scott Snyder has been able to really take a lot of what's going, very similar to Bruce Timm, take what's already been done and still branch out, give Gotham life, give Bruce Wayne life, and then still bring. And I'm not so sure about his Batman yet right now, but I still feel like he's handling the Wayne family. He's handling things very well. So right now, where it's going, I guess that's kind of my overall definitive Batman and such. Because for me, my Batman is always the guy that is thinking 10 times faster than you are, and he's already got a plan for everything like that. He will sometimes he's got contingency, but at the same time he knows that sometimes he will have to take a beating. Sometimes he'll sometimes pretend to get his ass kicked and kicked out of a bar just so he was able to insert a mic, and the thugs start getting all high on themselves and reveal information. He's like, oh, thank you, that's exactly what I needed. So it's not always about overpowering the guy with brute force,
but also outthinking it.
Exactly. So that's my deal. So I'm glad Frank Miller's not making a Batman movie. That's the main point. Like, I get
kind of what I wanted to know.
I get where he's coming from, because the other issue, though, and what's killed a lot of old school fans about Frank Miller is All-Star Batman and Robin. All-Star Batman and Robin sort of showed that Frank Miller is exactly not the guy to. We saw hints of it in Batman versus Spawn, the crossover.
Yeah.
We were like, reading it was just like, at the time it was like, oh, this is pretty fucking cool. But then at the same time, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with Batman? He was just the whole entire time. He was like punk like that, and he got his ass beat up and shit. It was really weird. But then later I started seeing future images of that.
Right.
In All-Star Batman and Robin, and a lot of that has to do with Suicide Squad as well, the whole Joker tattoos and what the fuck. So for me personally, I feel like Frank Miller is not the go-to person for where they need to be going. Who would you put in that place, or do you think Jeff Johns could do anything interesting with him?
And the reason I ask because, like Frank Miller, some people either like the way Jeff Johns writes or doesn't. Like, I liked when he did Flash and Green Lantern.
Yes.
Those two were awesome.
Great. His Justice League needs work, though. I particularly think it needs work. I think Johns is a very capable writer.
You mean the new 52 Justice
Yeah,
League?
just
when they
just all came together, I was just like...
The first 5-6 issues were my favorites.
My bigger problem with that is just the way it was churned out. Like I was really getting ready, and I saw Jim Lee was drawing the shit out of it. Batman v Superman was about to. It was like, and it said next issue, Batman versus Superman. We already saw it was already over. The next issue that came out, it was finished already. Batman had tried everything, and then it moved on. I'm like, the fuck, we didn't actually see it. So.
But in the opposite direction, I like that because I didn't want it to be one of those where Batman just gets punked.
Yeah.
Or Superman comes off being way too cocky. But I actually dislike that for those two characters because I like the idea that, okay, Batman doesn't have any superpowers. Okay, his intelligence, for some people to say, is a superpower. That's fine. He is awesome. And I think he gets downplayed a lot.
Yeah.
And in some cases, going up against Superman, anybody... sometimes the writing is not strong enough to justify what's going on, so he comes off being too cocky.
I'm not this is true, but I'm not a big fan of what Johns has been doing with Justice League so much, and even throughout the years, it seems like, for me personally, I don't like his particular take on the Justice League. I don't like his particular take on Batman either, in this sort of world. However, his Earth 1, whatever the hell it's called.
2.
No, not. I know what you're talking about, but
because I enjoyed that series.
No, not that one. The fuck is it called? Earth Prime or some shit like that. It's like a side story.
Almost like an Elseworlds kind of.
Kind of. No, it's called Earth. I think it's called Earth 1. Sort of story, like they did. The guy that wrote X-Men also did it with the Superman. He did 2 Superman stories, which was very Man of Steel-ish type story. But then this one, Alfred was more like a military expert guy. He had a cane like that.
Yeah. It's Earth 1.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I'm not
okay.
I wasn't feeling it in the beginning.
They had Superman Earth 1, and
right.
then
I wasn't feeling it in the beginning, but after reading the volume 2 of this particular Batman, Johns' work is growing on me a little bit more. I think it's specifically because you could see subconsciously he was responding to Batman v Superman about the killing and such, and he even took a couple shots about. He said those that need to wear armor shouldn't be out fighting or something like that. It was like some sort of it was kind of like a jab at the Dark Knight trilogy, but then in the next panel he gets his ass kicked, so he had to go get some armor. So I kind of feel like
he's getting better at balancing the characters.
I think so. I think as a businessman, it's helping reflect, like he's listening more to what like fans kind of want to see out of their Batman. So I hope that interpretation will still. But basically, right now, Scott Snyder is probably the best that's still using cape first theories. All right, guys, that's it for DC News right here. We got to still watch Flash tonight. And we will be done for today. Let me know what you guys think about all of this stuff going on in the DC world.
Definitely, and send me a couple messages. Let me know what you guys think of the DC world. Is there anything going on in the DC universe that you would like to see change, positive or negative? Let me know. Check it out on DC Sun's channel as well.
All right, guys, we're out. Take care. Peace.
All my friends are heathens, take it slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know.